It's time for world politics, and we've got an interesting debate going on. And of course, we've got our surveys going as well and our polls. And this time, one of the co founders is involved in that poll. And this time along, we're not doing good as Pod TV. Our success rate is not that good, even though I did learn that Sasha actually finished in a tie in the one he was winning. I thought he was winning, but then when I looked back at the final count, he actually finished in a statistical dead tie. So since, we're biased, we'll let him win and all along those lines. So even though it was a statistical tie with him and Putin, and don't worry, Putin was not who he was in the tie with. It was somebody else that had some background in terms of being a citizen or having ties to another country. It might have been Vivek. I got to double check and all along those lines. But in the current one that we have currently up, it is Kim Calhoun going up against Hillary Clinton, Janet Jackson, and definitely there's a fourth woman. I believe it is Nikki Haley. And unfortunately, neither Kim or Nikki are doing all that well. It's actually a race between Hillary and Janet. And the last time I checked, I believe Janet was winning, but it was very close. I think it might have been like 3-2 or something like that. But I'm here to bring in our panelists, and one that has got the votes and is not getting those votes so necessary and all along those lines. We got to get Nick and others to vote for her so she can go ahead and beat Janet and Hillary and all along those lines. So we'll see what happens in that regards. And later on, I'll find out the exact results. But I do know that it was between Hillary and Janet. And I want to say that Janet might have been winning. But I'll double check that.
It's kind of an unusual race because you do know Hillary is my sister, right?
Oh, I did not know that. Hillary is your sister. So okay, so got the sister going on and all along those lines. So we'll have to find out what's going on in that
the
space.
FBI gets us mixed up all the time in our facial recognition. Yep, they do. So yeah. So it's inevitable. She'll probably beat me. She always does. The Wicked Witch of the West always beats the Good Witch of Glenda. The North.
That is true. So we're going to bring in one of the other founders, and I think I'll get him on the survey for next week and everything. But we'll see what goes on. But we've got Nick
I am not a crook. I am not a crook. Just remember that.
That's all you got to remember. Our lawyer, many people think that lawyers are crooks. I will bring another lawyer into this conversation, a lawyer that's got some aspirations of being president himself, and I think that he's got a good chance. I'm looking for President Adam, and we've already had a President Adam. That was some time back and everything, but he'll be representing us, I believe, in the year possibly as early as 2028, but no later than 2032, and all along those lines. So definitely, we've got Lambarella here. It'll be President Lambarella or President Adam, and all in that space. So, are you ready to take over the job and all along those lines? And of course, we've got our representative from Canada, but I think that Adam's definitely ready for the job and ready for it. I guess the first thing I've got to ask you, Adam, and everybody here on the panel, and we'll get to some of the other things going on, is what the heck is going on with our Congress? They're sitting there having these lovely battles. Apparently, they kicked out the representatives, the Speaker of the House. The Speaker, McCarthy. They kicked him out and said, "Nah, you don't need to be here." And then there was this whole tit for tat around who's going to get whose office and all along those kind of spaces. But McCarthy was ousted, and now we're trying to figure out who's going to be in charge. Right now, it's somebody from North Carolina that is definitely temporary in the office, even though he probably won't be the one that holds the seat. And there's even some speculation that McCarthy gave a lot of money to the Republican Party. So he was a major donor, and some people are wondering whether he's going to go out and actually continue the campaigning, or whether he's going to be like the kid that loses in a basketball game or any sports and decides to take the basketball with them, and all in that kind of way. So, Adam, what are your thoughts? Is he going to take the basketball with him, kind of like the spoiled kid, or is he actually going to be involved still in the Republican Party and still trying to raise the money? Because apparently he is a major fundraiser and has done a great job as a fundraiser.
You're on mute.
I think that he will continue to be involved, but not to the extent that he could have and should have been involved. He should have never been ousted. Okay, He was a moderate. He was about compromise. He worked with the Democrats for a continuing resolution to avoid a government shutdown. But 8 far-right Republicans from the Freedom Caucus decided that they were going to essentially stage a coup. And it says something really bad about our democracy when 8 Republicans, with the support of 208 Democrats, can oust the speaker when 94% of the Republicans actually supported him. It was a bad day for democracy, a bad day for the Republicans, and a bad day for Matt Gaetz, who should be thrown out of Congress.
Yes, I agree. 100%. I agree.
Well, I think also it's very important. It shows something interesting about this guy, Patrick McHenry, if this is true, because this is a report I heard. He's going to kick Pelosi out of her office.
Mhm.
You cannot be serious. Okay, first of all, this McHenry guy is an embarrassment to the state of North Carolina, because I heard he's from our state, Mark.
He is.
Okay, an embarrassment, because you don't kick an old lady under the bus. I mean, you give her your seat.
Or on
if
the
you want-
street. You don't kick an old lady out onto the street.
Not, hold on a second. Not
She's
just an
from
old
San
lady, but an old
Francisco.
lady that was going to visit her friend who was actually had passed away. So they kicked her out, and I think that it's already take place. But they kicked her out when she was going to pay her respects to Dianne Feinstein and all in that kind of way. So he didn't even just kick her out while she was there in the area. She waited till she was going over to pay her respects to a friend and an ally.
Yeah, okay, but the thing
Can
is,
we just fire all of them?
okay,
You know,
This
when they
is
shut down, can we just go in and
classical
take over? Go ahead,
this
Nick.
is a classical jerk. I mean, the thing is, when I listen to this, and I've been to their offices up in Washington D.C. You know, they're all lined, and it's not like, boy, you're walking far to go one place to the next. I mean, frankly, it's no big deal. But this is a classical jerk move. This is a classical reason why you don't want to vote for the Republican Party when they pull stunts like this. And the person should be admonished for even doing it. So where is it? Where's the outrage by the media and the outrage by his own party and the outrage by the Democrats for allowing somebody to be so insensitive to take an old lady and kick her out of her bloody office? Now, I don't agree that she should be in office because I think she's too old. But at the same time, you know, old people get on buses, and the last thing I don't do is like kick them off and say, "Look, that's my seat." I mean, come on.
But don't
give me
you
a-
think that's the choice of the people? I mean, what happened to our choice?
I know.
Like,
This
she's
guy's
there
supposed to
for a
be from North
reason.
Carolina.
The people don't deserve a choice.
You know, well, what happened to
Is he
being a
stupid?
gentleman and a scholar, okay,
Idiot
rather than a
moron.
low down jerk? Oh, by the way, he's the acting Speaker of the House.
Yeah, he's,
Well, let me
he's
tell you,
the acting Speaker of the House right now. There are others that are going for that job and all along those lines. Now, I just have to ask this, and Adam, I don't know how often you've been. I know Nick has been, and I have not gone that many times, but I've been to DC a few times here and there. As a matter of fact, I went to the first inauguration of President Obama, not the second one, but I did go to the first one. As a matter of fact, I went there and had to get some of my access points from one of our North Carolina representatives. I can't remember if it was a senator or a person from the House of Representatives, but that person that I went to, their office was in the basement. It wasn't all that great of an office. So, like I said, I don't even know where Nancy Pelosi's office is, but some of these offices are literally not the greatest offices in the world. Because I remember being down basically in the basement and waiting for hours, and I do mean hours, to get my ticket and my access points and all along those lines. But it was a long process, and I imagine it's even worse now. But some of these offices are not exactly the greatest offices in the world.
well, I mean, I would agree with that, Mark. But I mean, when I was Washington D.C., I was part of NAFA PAC. We were the 12th largest political action committee in the country, and for 2 years, I went up there to. Well, I didn't make the donation. I made a donation to NAFA PAC, and they made donations to because we did it all above board, all legal. But we gave one congressman or one senator, I forget which it was, $600,000, one-time check. And I'm going like, whoa, talk about buying your way in to influence. So if you see my picture, and you will, Kim, you know, with who was that guy who's our senator, Tom Tillis, yeah. Okay, you see my picture with Tom Tillis and Burr, bought and paid for, baby, with NAFA PAC money.
Well,
And-
that's just
and
how you
that-
do
that
things in our
city-
democracy. You got to
That
pay
city
for
is
it.
a sewer, like a sewer. And you know, the filth that runs through it is money. It runs like
Yeah, but you're rubbing arms with the people in
water
the
down the whole
swamp.
place.
You're using your money to rub arms with people in the swamp.
Well, I mean, no, I was using NAFA PAC money to rub Like,
Yeah,
with the people up there. And the real problem that got being part of the PAC is that I was meeting every month with a group. There were about 12 of us or so. And what we did is we went through every one of the congressmen and senators trying to figure out if they were pro what we were doing or against it. If they were pro, literally the secretary got the checkbook out and started writing checks. And we would just say, give them this much, give them that, give them 1,500, give them 1,200, give them 25,000. I'm going like,
Hey,
whoa.
Nick, given what you're saying, and also kind of coming back to Adam's point, and it's a
Was it in a brown bag?
It's been a talking point for decades and everything. So,
Bag.
Adam and everybody here on the panel, I hear campaigns on the left, I hear campaigns on the right, always saying that we need to go in there and, kick the bums out. I think you just used that expression, Kim, and I'm not arguing with that. But with all the power that the lobbyists have, is this even realistic, and will it ever happen? Because they've been promising this, I would argue, as far back as probably Nixon and Truman, and even some further back than that. So they might have been asking to kick the bums out into Abraham Lincoln days and all in that. So is it doable? Because definitely in the modern century, the lobbyists are very much in control. So I hear campaigns. I mean, Obama said something similar, maybe not as the same kind of direction as Trump did, but he did say something similar. So is it just good talking points, or can they actually manage to do it?
Look, Mark, we elect these people. I mean, the thing is, the people that are responsible for those clowns in Washington D.C.
are us.
Okay, so the thing is, and they're representative of the district. That's the reason you see Marjorie Taylor Greene. She looks like a crazy to a lot of us, but some of us, except for Adam, haven't lived in Georgia, which I did. And some of the districts, that is what they're like. I mean, just off the wall. Green.
But that comes down to something that me and we talked about on the show, and definitely you brought it up, and me and Kim were talking about it off screen earlier, and all along those lines. But how much are the citizens expecting folks to be true to them, meaning true to the constituents of that city? Because I know a number of people, as y'all know, I'm here in Durham, North Carolina, are more concerned about what the constituents are, or what the senators or the representatives in that area are doing for this area, not necessarily the overall country, but this particular area, and all along those lines. And even to Marjorie Taylor Greene, to AOC, because a lot of people are not the biggest fans of AOC, just like there are a lot of people that aren't the biggest fans of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But if the people in, I think she's from one of the boroughs, I can't remember, Brooklyn or Bronx, but if they are happy with her and she is bringing stuff back to them, then she'll probably continue to win. And the same with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So how much of that is an issue as well? Because I think that most people are voting their own pocketbook and their own safety and their own interests, meaning the interests of the communities that they are from.
I think they're voting that, but I think to the idea of, can you kick them all out? You can, but will it make a difference? Absolutely not, because our elections and our politics are run by money. Every single congressman has 100 nicks with a brown bag and a lot of cash saying, I'm going to fund your campaign through my little PAC as long as you make sure you reduce that top tax rate from 39.6 to 35%. In other words, they buy their votes. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a world after Citizens United and McCutcheon, which were decided 5-4 by the Supreme Court, where money talks and bullshit walks. And that's why Nick went to Washington, to have influence. You know why he has influence? Because he has money, money. And that's what rules the day. And the only place that's worse than the United States would be Ukraine. But as far as North Carolina goes, North Carolina is really an enigma. I don't really think they should be part of the United States anymore, because quite frankly, it's like they have multiple personality disorder and don't know who to vote for. You got Duke University, where everybody goes there for a great education and then leaves the state. You have North Carolina State, who produces some good engineers. You have UNC, who produces some very good graduates who move out of the state.
Best doctors in the world.
Yeah, well, what you ultimately have is a state with a lot of poor people and a lot of wealthy people. And you ultimately, in my opinion, are not getting the kind of leaders out of North Carolina or in any state, particularly.
Hey, hold on a second. As a North Carolina representative, not in terms of politics, but
I agree with Adam. I agree with Adam on this. I always say these are the dumbest people ever, and we are heavy-weighted Trumpsters in this state. So yeah, cut them off.
No, but I heard too. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I wish I had the video. I heard a very
I would let the people in Raleigh-Durham vote, and maybe Winston-Salem.
No, but I've heard some interesting things because you have some interesting points, Adam. One is I heard a conversation where folks have said about Florida that Florida is similar because North Carolina definitely is made up of various regions. There is, of course, the metro areas like Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, but there and others as well. But there are also the mountains, the rural areas, and yes, it is a very divided area. We are considered a swing state, but Florida is also very divided. And I've got friends in Florida. As far as I'm concerned, Florida is 3 states in one. You've got the central part, which is where the leadership is and DeSantis is. You've also got further south, which is definitely a very diverse. And then you've got the north, which is very much involved with the military complex and all along those lines. And there are definitely maybe some other regions as well. But Florida is very divided. Texas is very divided. I actually heard an interesting argument. And Adam, you may find this interesting. Like I said, I wish I could downloaded this particular video, but it was a conversation around North Carolina and whether North Carolina should be considered part of the South for exactly the point that you were just talking about. Because it was in the, I think it was on either YouTube or TikTok, but the person was talking about some of the folks that are narrow-minded in some of their views, and I'll just leave it at that and everything, and definitely have some country bumpkin kind of views. So, but then to your point, there are some very advanced people here as well, and some great education. So they were trying to decide whether they were part of the South or not part of the South. And I do know North Carolina way back when used to be considered part of the New South, when there was people that were in leaderships like Terry Sanford and the former Governor Hunt and others that were trying to have some more progressive kind of viewpoints.
Well, the gap is very big here between, we have a very large gap of, the highly educated or the rich and the poverty. There is a huge gap.
Yeah, but you guys
I'm not doubting that, Ken, but there's a gap everywhere. One of the things I was going to tease Shaquille about it, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, because he was offering these things around money and all of that, even some of these bets that we've got going. I think he's got one going with Adam, and I think him and Nick were talking about some things around what folks do, including Trump, with their properties and their value and some of the things going on in this fraud case. And what I was going to tell Nick, and I'll tell Adam and anybody else here, is I know this great condo that folks can buy in downtown Durham. I think it's going, the last time I checked, for like around $1 million. One of your views, if you get this place, well, you get to live with a nice swimming pool because you're living in a high-rise area in downtown Durham. But one of the views, if you look to, depending on where you are in that apartment, is literally you have a dead-on view of the DPAC, which a lot of people love, and the Great Ball Stadium. The other part of your view, if you look that way, is the prison. So you get to get a great view of the prison. And if you look on another part in that great high rise view, I think you get to see one of the nuclear power plants and a number of other things. So I'm going like, would you pay $1 million for that? I ain't got $1 million to spend, but if I had it, I don't know that I'd be trying to spend it looking at those kind of viewpoints and everything. And there's some other things that aren't all that great to see either, but literally, depending on where you are, one of your views is dead on at the prison. So you and the prisoners can be right together.
I think one of the problems is we allow morons to vote in this country, and then we allow wealthy people through PACs and super PACs to basically buy politicians. Mm-hmm. So you have a combination of morons voting and the wealthiest of the wealthy influencing elections and the votes of politicians, like Mark Zuckerberg, like Nick. And that's their legal right to do so because the Supreme Court said that. But this isn't a democracy. And I think what we have to understand is that what's happening to people like Donald Trump right now is exactly a reflection of the corruption of our democratic system. You can have the rich people dictating elections and votes in Congress. You can have morons voting. And then when we don't like somebody who's running for Congress or the presidency, we can use the law as a weapon to persecute them. I feel like I'm in Ukraine, and I feel like I'm not sure who's more of a victim, Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin.
Well, I feel like that nobody took interest in this when Hillary was getting beaten up, and she was proven to be, somewhat innocent, just like Trump will be proven to be somewhat innocent. I think they're all guilty of something because when you're in those positions, you're going to compromise your core values to do whatever it takes to get whatever you want. It's not really just about the people. And I think Getz has proven that when he's sitting there and he's saying things like, this is about, you didn't do the party right. Well, you're not there for the party. The speaker is not there for his party. He's there for the people. He's there to keep things organized. So I think Gez needs to be thrown out. But I think if the government shuts down, I think the people just need to go in and take over and put new people in place. They need to be fired. They all need, if it shuts down, they need to be fired.
No, and I have a question for Adam, and then I've got a question for Sasha.
Grow
My
the
first question
hell up,
for
people.
Robert,
Grow up.
for Adam is there is this notion, I know it exists.
If I
in
walked
debates.
out my job and said I'm not going to do it, I'd get fired.
No, that's very much
I
true.
like you
I
that
do have
he's
a
angry.
quick question for Adam, because there is a notion that exists, and I think it even exists in debates and everything, and it's supposed to exist in Congress, and it's called the Robert's Rule of Order. I don't think that anybody's actually following those rules. So is it actually something that we should be dealing with? And does anybody even know those rules that are supposed to be rules of decorum and the way that you constitute yourself in these kind of public forums? Because I'm thinking a lot of people don't even pay attention to those rules. But you're in the space of academia, and I know that there's a lot of conversations around the Robert's Rule of Order in academia, and definitely supposed to be something that is used in Congress, used in debates, and a number of other places. And I think that it is totally gone by the wayside. What's your thoughts, Adam?
I think that you're correct about that, and I think there's no way to enforce Robert's Rules of Order if you just take one look at the debates and the circus that they are. It's ridiculous, and it reflects the fact that democracy in this country is really a show without any substance. Money talks, morons vote, and at the end of the day, the people are not cared about whatsoever. It's not democracy for the people; it's democracy for the elites, and at the core of it is corruption due to money. And that's how I view it. And I you mentioned Sasha. I'm curious if Sasha has gotten around to writing that letter of apology to Mr. Putin after his outburst in on Tuesday's episode.
Yeah, today in a small little Ukrainian city, there were 52 people killed by a Russian missile. So should we apologize to Putin that he couldn't make it at least 100, maybe 200 people, only 52? All civilians, children, absolutely helpless people were absolutely killed for nothing by no one but Mr. Putin. Adam.
Hey, Sasha, along those same lines, one of the things I was curious about, and I was going to bring it up in this show since it is world politics, is there is a new survey. I can't remember who it is. I think Ipsos is one of them, and it might have been Reuters, but it was definitely some folks in that poll space. And part of what is going on is that there is a frustration because the war has gone on for so long. And I've definitely heard you say several times that Ukraine is definitely taking the mantle of the free world on as we are fighting against Russia and all in that space. I've heard you say that several times, and I'm not arguing whether that is the case or not, but there are a number of folks that are looking at things in the U.S. and they're going like, look, I can't get me a house. I can't get me the food that I need to eat. I can't get a number of other things. So therefore, I don't necessarily want the money to go to Ukraine and all along those lines. So what is your answer to those folks? Because that is where the polls are saying is that folks are pulling back from their wanting to support the Ukraine because they have their own issues and their own concerns here in the United States. And I would argue that's probably happening in Europe and other places as well. So those that are in that mindset, what is your answer to them?
I have very bad news for you, Mark. The American dream is being killed right now. It's being killed in US itself and in Ukraine, because Ukraine is the window of US to continue its policy and its foreign politics, which is right now facing something that never happened before. There are 4 countries, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, which have nuclear capabilities. Iran is joining them very soon. And at some point, they will have much more nuclear warheads than United States. And essentially, they will dictate to United States what to do, when to do, how to do. Welcome to a new brave world. And the reason for that is happening is that United States people are being divided as never before. I don't understand even why people who cannot put together $400, and it's probably half of the population, and multimillionaires who dictate all the politics and policies in the United States. What do they really have in common? Maybe that they speak English, both of these parties. Rather than that, I don't understand what do they have in common. If, God forbid, there will be a war, why people who cannot put together $400 will defend the multimillionaires who conduct the internal and foreign policies or so on? I really don't get it. By the way, this what's happened now with Speaker of the House was hosted by a group of 8 extremists. This is incredible, create damage to United States of America. Can you imagine if somebody now will attack American interests, not necessarily in the United States, but somewhere else in Europe or in Asia or somewhere else? How America can respond if there is a house is basically paralyzed? It cannot respond in any meaningful way. So this is the United States interests have been dealt a very heavy blow by 8 extremists. And it's not their last word. It could be the same 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, a month from now, any time from now. So how are you going to govern the country in this condition?
You know, I got to tell you that I agree with almost everything that Sasha just said. That was so well stated. Okay. And I'm tired of the media talking about threats to democracy. We don't have a democracy. We have governance by the elites and by the rich who use their money to buy politicians. We allow morons in this country to vote who accidentally wander into a voting booth not knowing how to spell. We let racists and sexist and homophobic jerks vote. So you got the rich controlling policy. You got leaders where you can't really find any, and you have morons voting, and you have a society that is so divided that in part is fueled by academia and a constant left-wing trend that has no balance in educating our young people. Now, I'm not a Republican either, but I think
I
that
know you're not and everything, but Adam, I saw the most interesting kind of thing that was actually, it was either on YouTube or on TikTok and all along those lines, but it was actually a diatribe, and I want to say it might have been somebody on a New York subway or something along those lines, but they were attacking these 2 gentlemen for being for attacking the freedom of society and for being the scourge of society and all along these lines, because these 2 gentlemen were immigrants and all in that space. Now, by what I'm saying, you would think that these folks, and you've heard the expression Karen, there was a Karen type that was making this attack. So you would think that I might be talking about 2 Latin American gentlemen, 2 gentlemen from, say, some of the African nations or something of that nature. But what was found to be very interesting was the 2 folks that were being attacked on this subway or on this train were folks that were of, I want to say, a European and an Eastern European background. They might have been a German, or they might have been even Polish or something like that. But this woman went off on them because she was basically blaming them for what was going on in society, because they had come in here and taken the jobs and were not true American citizens. So like I said, it was definitely trending very much on the social media because it wasn't the stereotype of what folks would expect in that conversation. So any thoughts around that? Because it definitely caught me.
Well, I just saw part of what you pulled up said advancing equity. Let me tell you something. Equality of opportunity is critical in this country. Anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-homophobia is critical. Equity, however, is a fool's errand. If you look in countries like in the Scandinavian countries that have done everything they can to advance equity, what happens is there's never going to be equity because people self-select into different professions. More females are nurses, more males are bricklayers. I could go down the list. So the equity is not what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on a society free of discrimination and a society in which educational opportunities are equal and education is more affordable, and educational disparities, for our young people, such as when you go to school in Beverly Hills versus Crenshaw, educational opportunities are equal, you're never going to have equity because the human condition is such that people self-select differently. And stop talking about this democracy stuff. We don't have a democracy. We have money, elitism, and morons. And that's why our democracy is going to go down, because the biggest threat is from within, not from without.
I would like to mention something. I would like to mention something very interesting.
Please don't say Ukraine.
No, that's not about Ukraine. It's about Canada. And around 30 years ago, there were three brothers. Their name was Reichmann's brothers. They were the wealthiest Canadians ever. And they built in London, England, they built Dockland. It was their project. And they were given by Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and I'm shareholder of that bank, believe it or not. They gave them $2 billion loan 30 years ago without looking at their financial statements, because there was line up of all kind of financial institutions to give them money. Now, what's happened is that the Dockland project failed because the London was late with opening the subway line from downtown to Dockland, so it failed. But anyway, it's flourishing now. Now, after that debacle, the Canadian economists and scientists and professors of all kinds, they came up with a study. Okay, forget about the Reichmann brothers. Why don't we take all the wealth of all Canadians and split it evenly between all Canadian citizens? So everyone will start anew with the equal amount of money. That was great idea, brilliant. Everybody was so happy about it. But once you read all the document until the end, at the very end, they were saying that in about 3 years, and most likely in 5 years, Reichmann brothers will become billionaires, and very quickly. And all other distinguished, like Western and so other Canadian multimillionaires, they would regain their wealth, and very quickly. And other people who got their money, they will lose this money, and very quickly, in the casinos, in penny stocks, and just lotteries, or whatever it might think of. So this is, it was basically almost scientifically proved. And therefore, after that, nobody ever tried to do similar studies and so on. And one more story, but very quick one. Remember that around, even before that, a couple of years before that, there was a referendum. The Quebec wanted to become independent country. They wanted to completely ruin their ties with Canada and become independent country. There was even a time when Quebec insisted that they should send their own chess team to the Chess Olympics. They didn't want to be a part of Canadian team, and so on later. So what's happened is there was a referendum, and Quebec was short of, I think, 0.4% to actually become independent country, just 0.4%. So a couple of years later, there was also economic study that proves that in case of they would become independent countries and they would assume per capita the debt, they would be broke in about 5 years completely. They will be completely broken because of the natural resources, industries, human developments, many considerations. And that was a signal. There was never, ever any more referendums. Although by losing by only 0.4%, should have tried maybe a year, 2 years later to do another referendum. Why not? But after this,
so one of the things I'm very concerned about is all of this sleight of hand that goes on when they run this circus show and get everybody's attention over here. What's going on behind the scenes? And, I was on the financial show today, and one of our conversations was about the high interest rates or the rates in general, whether they're going up or down. And my thing is who does it benefit? Why is this happening? So everybody's paying more attention to all of this political joke of everyone ousting everyone as opposed to what's going on in our wallet. And, you know, when I look at who benefits with the higher interest rates, of course, they're going to keep going up because unsurprisingly, the people who benefit the most are the bond buyers, the lenders, the savers, all these people who are investors. You know, when the federal raises the rates, they all get a higher return on their investment. And that's what they're looking for right now. Then you have a situation because of gas and energy prices, you know, going higher than they ever have. Well, who does that hurt? That actually helps, again, the rich people, the people who already have money, and it hurts the people in poverty. It's putting them more and more into poverty. So I think that what's going on in the background is the rich man is taking control of everything. And while they're doing all of this song and dance routine, getting all the simple minds to watch, you know, Laurel and Hardy and get angry at each other about things, they're taking advantage of the biggest part of who we are, and that's our money. They're taking it away from us with higher interest rates because students can't graduate and go out and get a loan because there's to buy a house because it's too high. It's ridiculous. This is not designed to bring the price back down because my sister's been in the industry too long. And like she said, once it reached a certain peak and it stayed there a while, it will always stay there. You're not going to bring it down. You know, our country is crying because we're in trillions of dollars of debt. Well, you know, golly gee, you know, somebody gave away $880 billion in loans to already wealthy people who didn't have to pay it back. You know, excuse me, you know, that PPP went to a lot of people who really didn't need it. And here we are. It's those people who bought bonds who are now getting a higher return of rate on their investment through the Federal Reserve, causing it to go up. And don't tell me Jerome Powell didn't invest in bonds. That man is worth billions of dollars. Billions. And
just really quickly, hold on a second, Sasha and Kim, hold on a second. Hold on a second. I wanted to bring in Kelly, because Kelly has actually done work on campaigns and has definitely been here with us before and everything. So I wanted to hear some of her thoughts because she has definitely been watching from aside some of the things going on with the Republican Party, but some of those kind of tactics and also go on in the Democratic Party as well. So I did want to introduce to the audience that Kelly was back with us and if she had any thoughts about some of these things going on, including what went on with Mr. Bowman and the fire alarm and all along those spaces. But definitely if you've got any thoughts around some of the political posturing that is going on in the nature of what's happening in politics in general, because I do know that you've worked on a number of campaigns here in the area, including some that are of national consequences, and definitely we've been thinking about working on some new campaigns. So Kelly, glad you're here, and you've got any thoughts around some of this stuff that is going on. Hopefully she heard me.
You got to put on your speaker.
Yeah.
Their speaker's on.
Maybe it's not working there and everything, but definitely I was also bringing up some videos I had that might be of interest.
First Amendment, people are on silence there.
Could be some of that stuff going on in that space as well, and all along those lines. But definitely some very interesting conversation, and I definitely think that sometimes people are too much caught up in those political power brokers and those lobbyists that you were just talking about and all along those lines. But definitely there's a number of other things happening in that regards as well. And sometimes I would have a question, and since Kelly can't get on, and it was based on something that y'all were talking about. One of the conversations that reparations bring up, and I'm not saying that that is a correct attitude from some of the African American community, but there is a group out there. But one of the conversations that they bring up is that this notion of leveling the playing field. And part of the leveling of the playing field is that after slavery, there was reparations. It was reparations given to most of the landowners that were Southern landowners, and even some of those that moved to the West. We got a number of money and a number of things in that space. It was not given to others in the African American community. So that is why there's been a push for a decade or so around reparation and everything. So is that a fair argument that they are making? anybody.
Kelly's
Might be getting some interference from Kelly and everything. But what are your thoughts, Kim, and everything? Because that is some of the arguments that I've been hearing.
Say that again. There was too much going on.
Oh, sorry. One of the arguments that people have made for those that are supporters of reparation is that reparations actually did take place when it first happened in the end of slavery, but it went to the white Southern landowners. A lot of them got a lot of kickback in terms of money that was given and all in that space. And some of them even got money in the California areas, Texas, and a number of other places. So part of the argument is that that is what caused part of the issue with the great economic gap. Now, there's some also conversations about race and class and whether they are interrelated or not interrelated, but that they were some part of our society that did get reparations, and that is part of why reparations should be given now, because that was a injustice that was never corrected.
That was so long ago. It's kind of like if I go back and say, you know what, you guys owed my family XYZ 100 years ago and I want it. I mean, I was fortunate enough to see a family get their land back when a rich man went around and did quick writs against them because they were poor people who didn't know how to read. And, he was a big time farmer around these parts, and he took away the best lands and then turned them into, workers on his property. And so one of my greatest moments in this area was watching one of those families take that land back. And it was, God, it must have been 100 years later, but they got it back. So, and I was happy about that. It's right down the road. So, but I don't know, because, we're just talking about, why don't we just fix what we have? Okay. Let's just fix what we have. And, all of that giving away money years ago, to the rich man, it did just the same thing with the PPP loans. And all we're doing is we're watching this clown circus go on, and the same two clowns running for president. We're stupid. You know what? We deserve to go down the toilet and China take over. We do.
But Mark,
my argument is you want a man who says something like this. Watch this.
The one who was rather tough, you remember? Little Rocket Man. And he said, I have a red button on my desk. And I said, I have a red button too. Mine's bigger, better, and mine works a lot stronger than yours.
Come on, let's stop talking war and saying I got a red button. Let's go to war.
He's got a bigger red button.
But Kim, the one thing that we have to realize is that whatever rhetoric is being used, it works. So whether or not you like it, it's working.
It's simple minds.
But it doesn't make a difference. They're voting, and that's how we get the candidates that we get. So what people have to do, Democrats, Republicans, whatever, is they have to simplify the message so that people who are not engaged, who don't care about politics, can understand. As far as reparations are concerned, yes, if we can present the documentation, etc., why not go back? Why not rectify what's wrong? That's why people are exonerated and so many other things. If it's something that was done wrong, yes, we do need to correct those types of things instead of just washing it under the bridge and pretending it doesn't exist. I listened recently to I can't remember what it was, but it was an act that was put in place with regards to discrimination against Asians. And I said, gosh, we're doing that act against Asians. Why aren't we doing it across the board? There are so many other areas where this can be done. And that was one of the big fights that came up. It's like, why don't we have anyone fighting for African Americans? Why don't we have anyone fighting for Latinos? Why don't we have anyone fighting for American Indians? It's not a matter of pushing things underneath the water. It's a matter of creating a language or creating a message that is simplified, that other people can say, hey, look, you know what? Yeah, that is me. And they can also advocate with it. Conversely, if we don't start to simplify the message, if we don't start to make it applicable, if we don't start to heal some of the hurt or some of the wounds, what's going to happen is people are going to go for the comedy show because they can relate to the comedy show. Pressure is so intense. It's so tight right now until people are like, hey, look, you know what? I want to laugh. I spoke to one of my classmates, and so in Parsippany, New Jersey, there's a lot of conservative people. And I spoke to one of my classmates who was like straight up Democrat, and I asked him, and I said, he said, I voted for Trump, and I said, you happen to be more liberal than than anybody else I could ever imagine. Why would you vote for Trump? And he said, Kelly, because everything was so intense until I just needed to laugh. And he enabled me to breathe. I've spoken to young adults. I sent a picture to Mark recently about a young lady who's a famous rap star. And she's like, Trump gives us free monies and Trump exonerates the most exonerates the most felons. And when I went and pulled up the research, because it was very simple data, very, very simple data, Barack exonerated 1,900 people and Trump exonerated 243, I think it was. So if you've got 1,900 versus 243, just show people 1,900 versus 243. We go into too much of the explaining, etc., and it's too much. So with the stuff that we're saying, I think that Democrats have to find a way to simplify the message to get more people engaged and understand. So as far as reparations are concerned, it's a lot. It's 40 years. It's a mule. It's this person took my land. This person, Simplify the message, and you will get more people to support whatever the cause is. And I think that once again, Trump, Republicans, etc., have done a great job. I mean, I heard what you were saying about Canada and Quebec and etc. And I went to Quebec and I love Quebec. I remember when Quebec wanted to be its own country. I remember when Texas wanted to be, I forget the word, but you know what I mean, wanted to be its own country. And once again,
wanted to secede. That's the word you were looking for.
Succeed.
They tried that many years ago. It didn't work.
So Texas saying that they want to secede, that's a very, 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 very simple message. The opposition becomes so much complex. We've got this and these numbers and these figures and these figures and these figures. Find a way to fight to get more people engaged, because the bottom line is it doesn't make a difference if it's a circus, doesn't make a difference if it's a historical document. If it's simplified, you will get more people to the polls. You'll get more people engaged, more people excited, and we're not doing that.
I want to give you
I mention something very interesting, what I just read before the program. This is from The Economist. It's a British publication, quite popular in the United States too. And what they are saying, and they put a lot of cross tables to prove their point, is that in all decisive states, like from election point of view, we are talking about Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona. In first 6 months of this year, the Democrats raised about 2.5 times as much money as the Republicans. And in some states, for example, like Wisconsin and Michigan, it's not even comparable. It's like 4-1, 5-1, and without any very specific message or anything. It just shows that the Trump show is over. Nobody takes serious. No, it's over. It's done. It's done.
Wrong. I worked for Sherry Beasley. When I was working for Sherry
Wait
Beasley,
a second, Kelly. I have a proposition. You believe that Trump will win election next year?
It's not so much that Trump will win election. I believe the candidate who can make the message simple and engage the largest number of people will get people to the polls, because it doesn't make a difference if you have all the facts, all the data, all the etc. If people are not engaged, if they don't believe that their vote will make a difference, they're not going to get out and vote. When you look at Sherry Beasley, when you look at Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd, when you look at Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd,
Sasha.
She raised more funds, but what happened at the end was Ted Budd had all these PACs come in and all of a sudden donate funds. Ted Budd won. He won the race with one simple thing, because I'm very big on going back and getting feedback. I'm very big on just getting voter engagement, people engagement, very, very diverse crowds, etc. And one way that Ted Budd won that race is he put a doggone poster on 85, and on this poster, Sherry had a grimace. It was like a really mean mug face. And when I talked to individuals, they saw that mean mug face. And no matter what Sherry said, no matter how many babies she kissed, how many hands she shook, no matter how much she smiled, no matter what she did, what they saw was that grimace. Very short, very simple messaging. How many times do you how many times do you drive past that sign on 85? So you don't have to have the most money. You have to have the smartest and most strategic marketing. And you can't get people to the polls if they're not engaged. And I think that's what
I'm sorry to say that this is a technology of the past. It's not going to work anymore because people are so polarized and so divided. They don't care about the short, little, clever messages. It's not going to work anymore. It's the past. This is the past. People will look into what is this candidate, what he's bringing to the table, what's his track record. And there they will decide that even half-dead Biden is better than alive Trump. That's the reality.
Oh, that is so rude.
What I saw last night.
But Adam wants to respond to Kelly's thing as well. Go ahead, Adam.
I just have a couple of brief points. I just have a couple of brief points regarding reparations. First, there's so many practical difficulties with that. Who gets what, how much? But I think the reparations discussion really ignores a few important facts. From the 1940s to the early 1960s, African Americans were entering the middle class at a rate equal to or higher than whites. What happened and what really affected African Americans' entry into the middle class was LBJ's Great Society, namely his welfare programs, and the proliferation of single-parent families. Whereas 24% of African American children were born to single-parent families in the 40s to the early 60s, now it's almost 73%. Now, Kelly, you're talking about simplifying the message. The question is, how do you do that? I thought Bill Clinton did an effective job of doing that. But if you ask me, the way to simplify the message is to come out with simple policy proposals, such as, instead of reparations, we're going to give every single person under the poverty line $100,000. Workable, practical solutions, which you don't see much out of our leaders today. The third thing I'd say is, I'm not so sure why you believe in the right to vote, because what's happening is we are allowing morons to vote. We're allowing people who are in the KKK to vote. We're allowing sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ignorant morons to vote. And that is not going to help democracy work, because democracy depends on an informed citizenry. And for anybody who wants to research these issues, I would recommend reading Thomas Sowell. I think he is an outstanding scholar, and I think he proposes the kind of practical solutions and simple messages that are evidence-based, and that will lead to a better democracy and a more equitable citizenry.
Adam, I would increase $100,000 to $200,000 because of the inflation factor. Why don't
I'm just coming up with a number because I'm doing something. I'm saying I don't want to spend 20 years with a task force or a committee or a commission figuring this out. I want to say we're going to get hands on the money to people right now so that the American public knows our leaders are capable of doing something. Maybe it won't be perfect, but here's my plan. Instead of dividing America along the lines of race, let's at least take one step toward poverty, kind of like, $100,000 to everybody under the poverty line, tax-free. That's a start. And that's something that can be done efficiently. And then we have a simple message. And, I would also, again.
Hey, Adam, just really quickly, I'm going to play a video. It's actually of a historical figure. It's only 51 seconds, but he is actually very historical. He might have had some answers that you may agree with. You may not. It was actually that noted author, James Baldwin. So I'm going to play this, and y'all tell me if you think that it is still pertinent to this day.
I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is black. I know, as Malcolm X once put it, that the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That says a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians and certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen.
Finish what he was saying.
Well, I think that
Because Adam is actually finding a solution versus people complaining. But Adam, there are roughly 38 million people in the population that are listed, whether it's true or not, listed under the poverty level. So, but I think that solution is good. Let's kind of give them something sustainable, not trickle down a little bit. But go ahead.
Well, then it's a very expensive program. We could start funding it by taking some money out of our military budget. But at the end of the day, I don't think reparations is the answer. I think putting money in people's hands is the answer. I think taking away the right to vote from racist, morons, sexist, people like that is the answer. And I think, ultimately, people have to also take responsibility for their own lives. The proliferation of single-parent families among all races, the proliferation of drug addiction, has led to criminality. It has led to poverty. Read Daniel Patrick Moynihan's report in the 1960s that details this very thing. The way we start doing that is by improving education, putting money in people's pockets, and allowing people who actually have the moral character and a baseline level of, information to vote. And I'd like to know what Kelly thinks about this, because I'm curious.
Well, it's an incredibly
I think
stupid
one
idea.
of the
Wait. It's an incredibly stupid idea you came up with, Adam, and the panel came up with. Beyond stupid. And I'll tell you the reason why. The real problem with giving people this money is the money has no instructions. There is no financial education. They did not learn anything about real estate. They learned nothing about stocks. They learned nothing about bonds. They learned nothing about savings. They will lose every
So then receiving the money depends on getting that education.
The education first before the money comes.
A
If
deal.
you don't do it that way, you're wasting your time. You're wasting their money. The government goes more in debt for another bad
Nick,
government.
Nick,
I would
this
agree
is
with
what
that. I
I'm
would agree with that.
about
Nick, show me
Nick.
one politician
I'm
that has,
doing something. And
show me
I would
one
agree with Nick.
politician that has spent our money right. Show me-
Adam, but you know what I'd like to
Show me one.
mention? If you want to take money from the military budget, you know what then the best solution is? Let Russia take over and let them figure out how to work with minorities and all the disadvantaged people or so on.
I
Let
don't
them
understand
do
what you're
it.
saying though. If I condition the receipt of $100,000 on a 6-month program where they're educated on precisely what Nick is saying, what's wrong with that? I'm actually doing something to help people. You guys are talking.
Well, and you're enabling them to get a home. You're enabling them to get a job and an education. But Nick, honestly, our politicians don't know how to spend that money. They throw away more money than that every day.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
They're idiots.
And also, you got to get out of the
Idiots.
student loan garbage. Every day I read these horror stories about student loans, and it's appalling. It was in the Wall Street Journal today. A firefighter, $86,000 in debt. A lady. Apparently, she signed loans.
I
for
know
herself.
doctors that are in 250.
$258,000 in debt for a college education. You cannot be serious. Okay, if our educators are that stupid about money, we need really to change our education system first. Then you can go ahead and do these other wonderful ideas.
Well, we know what we need to do is change our politicians.
There is
They're
another
idiots.
great danger.
They don't know how to think.
Just 2-3 weeks
Our
ago,
politicians need
a
this
friend of
class.
mine, MD, very successful doctor. He just passed away. He had to work until his very last day, and he was destitute. He had no money when he passed away. Why? He was making tremendous amounts of money. His wife was a gambler. She was going every week to Las Vegas or something.
Oh, I love Las Vegas.
Leaving 200,000 here, 500,000 there. She was really heavy gambler. So this is another, and there's a lot of people. Remember, Adam, do you remember this, the crisis of 2008-9? Do you remember how many people were giving, okay, your house is worth $200,000. Don't worry, we'll give you $250,000 mortgage. So you'll get $50,000 in cash and $200,000 mortgage on your house. You're all set for life. In about a month, they would spend $50,000 in casino and elsewhere, and then they would put a key to the bank from the house and say,
Okay,
sorry.
so what's your solution then? I'd like to hear somebody have a solution.
Solution is very simple. You cannot fight the nature. Some people are stupid and some people are not. And those people who are not stupid will always have a better life. Their children will have a better life than stupid people. So the only way out of stupidity is education. And this is
I agree
very
with you.
tough.
I agree
it's
with
very
you.
tough.
Maybe as
Kelly,
they
you wanted to say
graduate,
something.
maybe as they graduate from certain classes, but even our own politicians need to take these classes because our country shouldn't be this big in debt. I mean, you're talking about people in poverty. Our country is considered in poverty. If we're that as much, our debt ratio is as high as it is, we're in poverty too.
Kelly,
And so that just shows me that, and all they do, all these men do is keep printing more money. They don't let the people in poverty print their own money. They don't let mothers who are single and struggling and can't get ahead print more money. So, Adam, I agree with you. I think a system where we figure out a way, and you're right, Sasha. And I've seen that research where, you give money to a dumb person, millions of dollars, they're going to be broke in a month. But if you give them this with education, with some terms, you just don't give money. You give it with terms and
right. But people in poverty aren't necessarily dumb. Kelly, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say I get leery when we start classifying people, especially when I hear the word dumb over and over again. But Jay-Z didn't go to college, but he's a billionaire. He's one of the richest people out here. So I get leery when we start doing that. I think that one of my colleagues, she's a professor, and she just did a $1.4 million study on student mental health. And one of the things that they found is that students had a very low sense of belongingness. That means that they felt like they couldn't relate to the professor. They felt as though they couldn't relate to their peers, et cetera, et cetera. So they felt as though they were an island amongst themselves. The point that I'm getting to is if we don't increase self-value, self-worth, the importance of interdependence and communication, you can teach people all you want. You can give them all the things that they want, but it still may not reach its full potential. It still may be a destructive tool because you haven't given them the confidence within. That's why I get very leery. I work with mental health. That I get very leery when we start labeling people, because what you start doing is you start building up walls. Do I think anybody's capable of learning? Well, do you know that Thomas Alva Edison, he actually got sent home from school because the professor said he couldn't learn and he wouldn't be anything. Michael Phelps, they told him he wouldn't be anything. So when you start talking about what people are not, once again, you're building up additional walls. I think what you do is you find ways to break down those walls so that people are ready to learn new skills. People are ready to ask for help where they don't know those skills, and people are ready to engage. I think we need a more productive society so we can move further along. It's okay if somebody doesn't know everything. We don't have to know everything. We just have to know the puzzle. And we're not building people up in a way that they can learn that piece of the puzzle. And I think, once again, when you talk about going to the polls and voting, that's why a lot of people may not vote the way that we would like for them to vote, because maybe they were knocked down several times by that particular party or individuals, etc. I mean, we have to really, really, really work on the human issue if we want to get people engaged and if we want to have some type of influence.
And unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour and we're going to have to wrap. And this has been the most, and there's some things here that we need to focus on too, is the unemployment and the people who are homeless who can't get a job because they're homeless and they don't have an address. So maybe that could be part of our conversation next and how we can solve some of those problems. Until then, everyone, we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 5 p.m. where we're going to be talking about more of the current events and the problems that we have and potentially solve some problems. Kelly, that was great. Adam, thank you. Sasha, wonderful stories. Mark, I'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I don't have it.